Hi, I'm Kevin Klein. Welcome to another edition of Inside Winnipeg Politics. I'm joined by my colleague Geoff Currier, a columnist within the Winnipeg Sun, as well as Royce Koop, another columnist for the Winnipeg Sun, and also a professor of political science at the University of Manitoba. Well, things are heating up in the Liberal race. We're looking for the next prime minister and leader of the Liberal Party. There's been a number of promises made that again, we talked about in our last episode how everyone has amnesia and nobody remembers what they voted for, and now it's all bad. So I heard recently that now even Mark Carney is saying that carbon tax is terrible, and if I get elected, I'm going to have to get rid of it.
Well, yeah, the two most and by the way, the people who I've spoken to who are connected to the inside of this liberal race reasonably well, they believe that Carney's probably going to be the guy. Now that's uncertain, and predicting these things is always very, very tricky business. So I'm not going to make that kind of prediction. But the two most unpopular things that the Liberal Party has going for it right now are Justin Trudeau and the carbon tax. So if Mark Carney replaces Justin Trudeau and gasses the carbon tax, now, Royce, do you have a race for the next
Yeah,
election?
well, I mean, the carbon tax is definitely something the Conservatives have invested a huge amount of capital into, as well as Justin Trudeau. I think that's exactly right. And the problem for the Liberals right now is, Kevin, you said the race is heating up. In some ways, it's cooling down. We had the Liberal Party kick one of the candidates out. They announced the candidates that had actually been accepted for the leadership race, and then almost immediately one of them dropped out and endorsed Carney, who's also getting a huge number of endorsements from the Liberal cabinet and the Liberal caucus. In fact, it seems like Liberal cabinet ministers are more likely to be doing calls for Carney than they are to deal with this incoming tariff fight. So it feels like the Liberal Party is consolidating around a single candidate. I'm not sure it's going to work out that way. I think Freeland doesn't have the kind of momentum that Carney has, but I'm not sure this is going to work out for the Liberal Party. We've seen this before, and his name was Michael Ignatieff.
Now, as far as Carney is concerned, and you mentioned the cabinet ministers, which is great. The thing that those cabinet ministers bring, Royce, and you should speak to this, is that they've got the machinery to get out there and sell memberships. And that's what gets you the leadership. It's not the endorsement from a cabinet minister. It's the cabinet minister's machinery on the ground that sells party memberships and the party members vote.
Yeah, but with the Liberal Party of the Federal Liberal Party, you don't have to sell a membership. They don't have to pay anything.
No, but you got to get out there and get the members, and you got to get those people voting, right? And
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah,
if you have the weight of cabinet behind you, that's pretty powerful stuff.
yeah, I think that's right. You still have to recruit them. It occurred to me that Carney was getting all these endorsements from these cabinet ministers who've been a complete disaster in their portfolios, and Mark Miller, Sean Fraser, and I thought, who would want these goofballs to endorse them? But that's actually, you're exactly right, Jeff. That's why. Like, these are people with their own little political machines and organizations in Quebec and Atlantic Canada, and they can bring people out to vote for him. And so I think it's looking, as each day passes, it looks more and more like this is going to be a Carney coronation.
So look, we're going to talk about this a lot. I want to bring in some talk about the tariff, but I want to touch on something that Geoff touched on, because even from a marketing perspective, and you sit back, I've said, and some conservatives are going to get mad at me. Pierre Poilievre has stuck to his guns. Axe the tax, axe the tax, axe the tax, axe the tax. That's been his big thing. He's put every ounce of effort and money into axe the tax, and Justin Trudeau's bad. We get it. So what's your plan then? If Carney does get in, like Geoff said, gets rid of the carbon tax, now all of a sudden you've spent a year and millions of dollars going after the axe the tax. They call a vote, of course, in Parliament to axe the tax. Can the Conservatives vote against it? Like, would they be able to vote against? They'll find some reason for it because they'll get some political spin. But is the NDP going to vote against it? Are the Bloc going to vote against it? I think this is a game changer for anybody running for the leadership of the Liberal Party right now. And I agree with Geoff on this one, that changes the marketing. So if you're a football team and you practice for weeks because you're going to play the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl, and at the last minute they come in and say, you know what? Now you're going to play the Buffalo Bills. Your game plan is kind of screwed.
Yeah, and certainly when it comes to the idea of kind of kneecapping the conservatives, it's a long-standing liberal strategy to borrow policy planks from other parties' platforms and use them to their advantage. And this might be one of those things. Now it's way too soon to tell. Again, we don't even know for sure if Carney's going to win the leadership, and if he does, can he sell the idea of the Liberals getting rid of the tax that they have? This is the hill they've died on. Can he sell that to Canadians that all of a sudden, after 10 years of touting this carbon tax, we've changed our minds? Can they sell that? We don't know yet.
Yeah, are Canadians willing to accept this absolutely massive, epic flip-flop? The carbon tax was the centerpiece, the policy centerpiece of the Liberal government for years, and now everyone is turning their back on it. I mean, I don't want to pretend that this is good for Polyev. Liberals turning their back on the carbon tax. It's not. It's bad for the Conservatives, but they spent years using the carbon tax to kind of to beat the Liberal Party, and it's had an effect. It's hurt support for the Liberals. It's hurt confidence in them. It's not just about Justin Trudeau. It's about the party and the confidence that people have in the party. And so, you kind of lose that club. But there's going to be other things as well. If Freeland becomes the leader, then she's closely associated with Trudeau's legacy. Carney becomes the leader, then he's got his own problems. Complete lack of experience in politics. And the Conservative Party can respond to those sorts of things pretty quickly, I think.
Well, and we can talk about this for a long time, but I want to talk about the tariffs because this is a good example of what's happening, I think, in Canadian politics. We had this big, long discussion. I want to thank everyone that watches us on YouTube. If you look at the comments where we talked about the Trump factor, fantastic comments. Like really intelligent comments. There's some, of course, that are a little out there, but there's some really intelligent comments on there about what's happening. And I got you really get the sense that yes, it's a negotiating point, but I'm not hearing anything concrete other than Daniel Smith again talking about we need a border czar. So I've got a column in the Saturday Winnipeg Sun saying, listen, why doesn't Wab Kinew just go ahead and appoint a border czar for Manitoba and just get in the passing lane of the Canadian government and everybody else and start dealing one-on-one with the U.S. Border Patrol people. So, what do you want us to do? Because I think, and I haven't heard really anything concrete from Polyev. I know I'm going to get beat up for it. I'm right in the middle here. I think Polyev should be, this is a good opportunity for him to come out and start showing his strength as a leader. What would you do? What are you suggesting? Let's make things happen. I don't like, the NDP leaders coming out and saying, oh, we're still going to bring down the government and we still want to bring Parliament back in. I want to hear what you're going to do to address one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest threats that we have faced in decades. Remember, Trump was in power when he negotiated the new free trade deal with Canada and Mexico. And now he's changing the game. And Americans aren't that upset with it, despite what people say. And there's some comments on our YouTube page about that video from Americans that are like, hey, we're okay with this. If it lowers our income tax, we're okay with this. But
it's not up to American voters to care how we feel about something. It's up to them how they feel about their country.
Agree, but why isn't this something that we're talking about not only as part of this leadership race, but where are the people in opposition? How come they're kind of hiding in the background about this?
Does Pierre Poilievre not have an answer, Royce? Is he stumped?
I'm not sure. I think he gave an interview this week that went into a little bit more detail. I'm not sure what the details are, but he's the leader of the opposition. Really, this is something the government should be more active on. And the people that have actually been active and successful are some small number of the premiers, especially Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who's been very active and very effective at lobbying, at appearing on American media. And then just yesterday, what was the result of this? It was Donald Trump musing that the tariffs might not apply to Alberta oil and gas exports or Canadian oil and gas exports to the U.S. That's a big triumph for her if that actually turns out to be the case. And it's going to be pretty amazing for all of us in Canada, not just Albertans. So oil and gas is a big part of our overall GDP. And so she's the one that's making a big difference here. I think the federal government, like it's striking. You know, he prorogued Parliament in the middle of one of the biggest crises that we faced in our lifetimes. It's scandalous, so that they could deal with their own internal party affairs.
Running the federal government these days? Who's in charge? Is anybody minding the store?
The Senate? That's a whole different show, the Senate, a whole different show. So, okay, so we know now that, probably by the time this airs, the tariffs will be in place. The talk was 25% against, some Canadian goods and Mexican goods, 10% on Chinese goods, so goods coming in from China and stuff like that. But I want to get back to it then. Let's talk about the premiers. Yes, Danielle Smith has taken action and she will benefit. The Alberta is going to benefit from the work that she's doing. She had Fox News at the Coots border in Alberta interviewing people because they had sheriffs along there. I mean, I know we have some conservation officers and stuff, and I'm not blaming Wob. I don't think it's his fault, but I really think we've got to take some decisive action here. Like, why isn't he, like he talked about, well, we should have somebody in Washington. That was a great idea, but why isn't it done? Like, I don't want, and then you still have people like Nahani Fontaine and others going on social media just beating the crap out of Donald Trump. It's not helping. Like, take some decisive action like Smith did, and maybe some wheat or whatever from Manitoba or protein, whatever it is that we're exporting to the US, might get a break.
Yeah, I mean, the Nahani Fontaines of the world play right into Donald Trump's trap. I mean, he baits people like that and they fall for it. And you'd think that after 4 years of, first of all, 2 years of him campaigning, 4 years in power, and the last 2 years of him reemerging, you'd think you'd be wise to the guy by now. That falling for that is not the way to go. And Smith, to her credit, I mean, you're getting, he's reeling you in. I mean, really, folks. I mean, you haven't smartened up by that to his strategy, to his shtick by now. Boy, that doesn't speak very highly of anybody who's still falling for that stuff. Anyway, in terms of Smith, she's really the lone voice among Canadian premiers saying retaliatory tariffs are not the way to go, and she's really kind of the lone wolf out there. But as you said, maybe her strategy is going to be the winning one.
Yeah, and it is a counterpoint, I think, to what you said, Kevin. I think Canoe has done some things. Smith has done a lot more with respect to our border with the U.S. But we live in a federation. Why are provincial governments doing anything on the border? It's supposed to be the national government that's doing that. And here we have the provinces picking up the slack for a federal government that is missing in action right now. We have a government that's weak on the border, and the blame falls squarely onto Justin Trudeau's shoulders. And I'd like to see Canoe do more, but really, he shouldn't be doing anything at all, and neither should Smith. It should be the federal government, and the fact that they have to pick up the slack is a reflection of weakness of the feds right now.
I agree, but he's doing something, and I'm going to give him credit for that. But offering to pay, give tax breaks and put money into businesses that are impacted by the tariff, I think is the wrong message you want to send. That we can't afford to keep doing that kind of stuff. So let's hire a border czar. Let's get somebody in Washington knocking on doors that can speak the same language Trump does. It's just he's a business negotiator, and we need somebody that could have that kind of a conversation. But I do agree, tariffs on goods coming in from the United States only hurts us. Right now, we are taxed beyond belief. Now we're going to put a tariff on goods coming in from the US where we get most of our goods from. That is just ridiculous. Like, people won't be able to eat.
Hey, what's Gary Doer doing these days? Could we send him back?
Well,
he's a guy who's got lots of experience in negotiation, knows Washington inside out.
I just don't, maybe he's a guy.
He would not be a bad choice. If you want to appoint somebody as a special envoy to deal with the tariff issue, he wouldn't be a bad choice.
I love Gary Doer. I'll be honest. I've had conversations with Gary before I got in politics and after I got in politics. I have a lot of respect for Gary. He's a great guy and stuff. I don't think he's the guy to send. I don't think you want to send a politician. I really don't. I agree with Canoe on that one. Even he said we don't want to send a politician. Like you need to send somebody who's been in business that can have these conversations. And really, all they want is here's the biggest problem. And as the former chair of the Winnipeg Police, I can tell you we have a serious drug problem in our city. We make drugs here too. Just like we are, we know there's Mexican cartel in Canada. We know saw a big bust in BC, but we also have a lot of weapons being made here that are making their way across the border. Why we need to take a stance here too. Like it's not just protect our borders. It's not just take action on that, but we need to take action on the illegal gun trade going on right here in our own backyard, and the drug dens and all of that kind of stuff. I think that's what Trump is looking for, an effort, a team effort to go after the bad guys and patrol the border.